All right, welcome to the 10th Year Seniors. We're here with filmmaker Maria Govan, and we're here to talk about her film Play the Devil. And I watched it last night, and I thought that it was a really, really great film. It spoke to me as someone, my friend and I, John, we've been to Trinidad before and a few times. So what was your motivation behind making the film? What was the catalyst that made you say, okay, I want to go out there, make a film specifically set in Trinidad?
Yeah, I mean, the Trinidad thing kind of was organic. I mean, I was there for a film festival. I got invited back for this writing workshop. I ended up staying with Abigail Hadid, my producer, who's really a photographer by profession. And she had been documenting traditional carnival for decades and had invited me back, not so much just for carnival, the fancy carnival, but really the traditional, because I had done a Junkanoo documentary, and she knew I was interested in that. And I applied for a D'Aguila Foundation grant to travel, and I did get it. And then I spent time there, and I saw this amazing ritual, which is the Blue Devils of Paramin, which are blue devils, people that cover themselves in blue paint. This pre-Lenten kind of crazy ritual. And it was just so cinematic and amazing that I said to Abigail that night, I was like, wow, I can't believe nobody's made a film, like a fiction with these devils. Like, it's just incredible. I
think watching the film, that was the first thing that struck me, that while the rest of the film was beautiful, I saw when the Blue Devils came, I was like, this is I need a 45-minute sequence of just this. Exactly. So as a filmmaker, how do you, not only just in that aspect, but how do you restrain yourself to be like, okay, this is going to be in my third act, this is what people are here for, but then also because you've made a film in the Bahamas, and when you make a film in beautiful locations, how do you not let the location take over the storytelling?
Well, that's interesting again, because I think Play the Devil, funny enough, like Abigail took me to all these really sort of random places in Trinidad, like bird whistling competitions or the North Coast and a beach house. And, Trinidad has a really strange kind of cultural mix. And the film, somehow the story just worked with all these great locations naturally. Like, people think it was the opposite, that I tried to integrate them, but it was, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason for me. Oftentimes when I write, it's always the first scene. It's rarely what I did with Play the Devil, which was the last scene,
Right.
It's often that I'll have a really strong first scene that sets up something, and then I have to figure out what the heck happens next, which is the hardest part. The first act is easy. The third act is usually fairly easy. It's this sort of the middle, second act for me.
To keep it engaging really for the audience and for everyone. Yeah. So with that in mind, what do you do when you get writer's block? Like, how do you overcome that? Do you just write through it? Do you walk this, in this case, did you walk the streets in Trinidad, look at pictures of
all of them? I don't know. I mean, I don't have sort of a specific ritual, but I do. I sort of write through it. I take breaks. I beat my head against the wall. I don't know. I talk to my therapist. I'm just kidding.
No, all of those sound reasonable to me. Let me just say.
I know. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, this script, funny enough, kind of really came through me with this gust. Like, I wrote it in 2.5. The first draft. I've never had this experience. So, and this is actually not good. To mention, because it's not the way that one should write. But I did write a first draft in 3 weeks, and it was a decent first draft. And I think for me, sometimes, because the material, it's close to me on a lot of levels, sort of underneath, but it's not my story per se. And so I could almost see it more clearly. I could see, it's sort of, I had distance from it.
You had distance from the material, so you were better able to engage. In a previous, I think, interview I read about Play the Devil, it was mentioned that you saw a story in a Trinidadian newspaper about a queer young man who had committed suicide, and that was kind of the reason that you wanted to bring the story out there and put it out for the public, not just for Trinidad, but for the Caribbean community at large. And what impacts do you think a film like this will have for younger people who are struggling with these same kind of issues in their own lives?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I did see this horrible thing happen in Trinidad, and it really struck me. And I kept thinking about this kid, and I looked him up, and I saw his picture, and I was really kind of really not obsessed, but I kept thinking, why? Why would you do that and not
talk to someone?
Talk to someone. Were you really that alienated? And I guess I feel like in the Caribbean, I think it's very difficult to grow up as a queer adolescent period in the world. I think it's obviously depending on where you're from. I think it's particularly difficult for younger men, and I think it's particularly, not even more so, because this young man was not African. He was not Afro-Trini. He was actually Middle Eastern. And I maybe shouldn't say that because I don't know that I need to identify him. But anyways, he, I think it's hard. I think it's really hard for young men. And so it started to, I was thinking through that as also a queer filmmaker, and I was thinking, my struggle though was how do I end it so that it has the impact that I want. And the truth is I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I hope that what it does is it gets people talking.
Right.
I hope that, all of the characters are humanized. I tried really hard to make them all human, even the older man, who was very difficult to do that with in a way, to not just write
a predator. Yeah.
But to write somebody who was, or to at least direct somebody who was a little more tragic and a little, so he's sort of pathetic.
Because he's someone who's dealing with those own issues in his life. Like when he says that he came home from London, he was married to this person who he grew distance from, but he had this daughter that at the same time. So I felt that, like, in my opinion, you did a good job, like, humanizing him.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that usually happens to people, and you spoke about this at the press conference earlier, like, there's a dark side, I think, to everyone that we try to keep hidden, and we don't allow it to be revealed. And Play the Devil, the name of the film, the theme of Playing the Devil is played into that. Is your next work gonna, like, I think, get more into that aspect of human nature? Because, like, to me, that, like, Play the Devil, like, investigated some portions of it, but I feel like, there's more to mine there. Yeah.
I think there is more to mine, and that's a really great question, because I've been thinking so much about my next work, and there's so much resource that goes into making films. There's so much energy and life force and money, frankly, and I really feel like we have a huge responsibility with all of that as filmmakers. And I've been wondering, like, is there, because I often think maybe I should offer up some hope next time and not write, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which I tend to err to the dark, but, and I do
embrace the darkness.
I know, exactly. Yeah. I'm embracing it. But yeah, I do. I think that's I think another thing I've realized just with my own work that I sort of unconsciously am drawn to is this idea of a class and economics and how that plays into our lives, because it sometimes feels unfair to me that people who are really very poor are sort of set up to stand next to with the same morality, the same sort of moral stick as people that are extremely privileged. And the two realities are pretty different, I mean, people, I don't know, and I think my work sort of looks at that, like, what is the reality of sort of more working class life experience? And how does that affect the decisions we make in our lives and the paths that we take and the power that we have? And I'm not to say that, I just want to challenge that, because I feel like we don't really look at that. We sort of have this idea that everybody's supposed to be really great. We're all supposed to be really conscious, great people out there doing the right things. And yet systemically there are people that are really disadvantaged and their lives are set up differently. And it's almost like we don't want to look at that. We just want to make it a personal, an individual, and there is, to some degree, it is about the individual, but on another level it's not, And so I think that's also interesting to me.
Yeah, and as a filmmaker, part of, I guess, your job is to be able to show both sides of that argument at the time. Like, even in this film, you had, like, one person who was wealthier, he was married, and, like, his moral obligation to his family and to his life was different than the moral obligation of our protagonist. So, I mean, I just heard you say that, and I hope John recorded, because I want to steal all of that and then try to write something about it. So that would be great. But I just want to thank you for sitting down with us for a little bit. I really enjoyed Play the Devil. I did a deep dive into all of your films and to your resume as soon as, like, I knew we were going to be attending this. And I wish you great luck. And thank you for sitting down once again.
I hope I get to make another one.
Yes.
That's my one, my prayer. I think that's all we can sort of hope for. Oops, did I just mess up the mic?
I think you're good. Okay.
Yeah, that we get to do at least another one.
Yes.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Y'all.
All right,
take care.
Bye.